Hey, Clear Lake peeps, Ross England here with Clear Lake Guide Service and your Clear Lake report for April 4th, 2024. A lot of fours. A couple things, just some housekeeping to start out. And I kind of goofed up a little bit. I said last report that this big kayak tournament was last weekend. It turns out it's this coming weekend, so sorry about that. As always, when I make a mistake, and I do, every once in a while I goof up, if you look down in the comments down below the video, somebody will correct me and the correct information will be on there. I promise I do my best to try to get it right, but sometimes I hose it up, so, sorry about that. Also, Kelly from Bend, I want to tell you, David did a good job for a couple of days, so he did well. I understand that you kind of pay attention to this, so hi, Kelly. Okay, let's talk about what's going on. For those, it seems like most people want to watch this thing and just get the current information and then bail out. If you're a little bit interested in me flapping my jibs about some of the fishing, hang to the end of the video and we'll talk about a little bit about what our experience was this past week. So lake level is currently at 8.02 and it's been that way it's kind of, when you look at it, depending on how the wind is blown, it's either a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but the bottom line is it's over 8, which means the idle zone out a quarter mile from shore is still in effect. It doesn't look like they're letting out quite as much water, so I mean it's probably going to linger for another week or so. Although it looks like we've got some really good weather coming next week, where it could drop it down a little bit. But anyway, so lake level has pretty much been consistent. We'll just call it an even 8 feet, a little bit more than that. So idle speed only, and idle speed, by the way, does not mean with your bow up in the air. That's beyond 5 miles an hour. Water clarity. I've mostly been around the upper part of the lake, which is what I'm gonna do probably all spring. It's varied anywhere from, I've seen a couple of places where I could see about 3 feet, almost 3.5 feet. And then there's other areas where you can only see a foot, and it's everywhere in between. Depending on where you are and what day it is, you may, get different results, but that's what I've seen. Watercolor is actually, it's pretty good. I mean, I wouldn't want to sight fish in what I'm seeing right now, but just for fishing, the watercolor looks good. Water temperature, early in the week, we saw 62 and 63 degrees. Late in the day, probably close to 64 in some areas. Yesterday, which was, as of reporting this, was Wednesday afternoon, it was 58, so it had dropped. I mean, it was pretty cool yesterday afternoon. I'm sure is worse today. We got snow around the lake today, not down to lake level, but probably down to, conservatively we'll say 2,500 feet, maybe made it down to 2,000, but it was cold last night. It's cold now, and it's going to be down in the 30s for Friday morning. So water temperature has dropped. I expect that to change big time next week, because of the we've got one day next week, I think it's supposed to be 80 degrees. So look for it to climb back up into probably the 60s and stay there probably until another storm comes through, the way this wacky month has gone. So those are your conditions. I'll add to it, there are some floaters out there. I hit one, thought it was a tule. I'm just tooling down the lake at 30 miles an hour, and I'm looking up in the distance and I see a little line going across, and it just looked like a floating tule. Well, it turned out it was actually a 2x4, and I kind of clipped it with my lower unit. So and I saw stuff bigger than that floating out there. So if you're out in low light conditions or in windy conditions, keep your eye open, because there is still stuff floating around out there, and we see some of it coming down the creek too. So those are your conditions. This week's activity is the kayak event. As of talking to somebody at the tackle shop this morning, there's 151 kayaks signed up so far. So good for them. They're going to have a good event. And the way they operate, they take off all over the lake at any given time. So, well, no, there's scheduled start times and end times. We have one more week. I think it's the 18th is when the One Bass Northern Clear Lake Open happens, and they've already got 150 plus boats. I think the last thing I saw, they were still looking for almost 30 AMs, or they had 30 AMs waiting for pros to sign up. But at this point, it's at least 150 boats. That runs the 18th, 19th, and 20th. It's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday deal. So I'm only telling you that because there'll be people pre-fishing between now and then, obviously. Those are the activities as far as I am aware. Now let's talk about fishing just a little bit. We got out 3 days this week, and it's kind of the same thing that's been happening for me, at least for the last couple weeks. Been able to catch fish, but the numbers are small, as far as just flat how many fish that we've been able to boat. We had Monday, we had I think 10 fish, one guy 10 fish for 24 plus pounds. Same guy Tuesday, 6 fish, 23 pounds. And yesterday, father, 2 kids, live bait, 15 fish, which was better, but still 15 fish on live bait, 34 pounds. So the fish are looking very, very good. All those fish, we caught 2 fish, I believe, that were under 3 pounds. The majority of them are just 3 3/4 pounds to 5 pounds. But just a good solid average is a 4-pound fish if you can catch one. We caught them on jerk baits, swim baits, drop shot, shaky head, minnows. That's what we did for the past 3 days. So it's funny because you'll go into a spot and you'll fish it with artificials, and you might get a bite, you might catch fish, come back with live bait, catch 3 or 4. Not every spot, but some spots, and it's like they're there and they are super healthy. Oh, we did catch 1 3-pound 5-ounce crappie. Let's see, the rest of you who are interested in carp and all that, I really haven't seen any carp where I've been. I've seen a couple of schools of buffalo up shallow, but other than that, nothing. And I actually have not seen anybody fishing for crappie this past week. So I understand it's happening down, in the Rattlesnake Arm. There's a lot of crappie-sized minnows being sold. So there you go with that. So it's gonna be interesting. I think next week it'll really bust open. We had just the period between Monday and Tuesday. Monday, we found a couple of docks that had 1 or 2 suspended fish under them late in the afternoon. Come by and check those same docks on Tuesday, and anywhere from 5 to 12 fish were sitting on those docks. after this cold weather. I'm sure that changed. The other difference was obviously there was very few docks we looked at that we saw that one fish on Monday, and on Tuesday there were a lot more docks that had fish on them. So they've definitely moved up. You can see guys sitting up in super shallow water like they're sight fishing, and I'm sure that's what they're doing, but they have to be in super shallow water in, you know, just the right conditions. I haven't seen anything yet, although I haven't really worked hard at trying to find them. There's nothing that's really jumping out at me. So there's your report for today. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week.